Applying for a firearm license in South Africa is quite a bit of work. And on top of that, the legal implications stretch far beyond just the application. In part one of Legal Talk with Francois, we break down this process and the laws that control your life afterwards. Francois de Kock from Francois de Kock Attorneys in Brooklyn, Pretoria, joins us for this series called Legal Talk with Francois. Francois, hello and welcome.
Hi, Rian. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to our discussion.
Francois, can you maybe just give us a little bit of background about yourself? I know you're situated in Brooklyn, in Pretoria. What is your legal field of expertise, if I can call it that?
Certainly, Rian. Just to give you some brief background, I studied law at the University of Pretoria. I commenced my articles of clerkship in January 2013, and subsequently to being admitted as an attorney, I moved to Mr. John Kotze Attorneys in Boksburg. Mr. Kotze is quite a renowned firearm law expert in the country. I had the privilege of working for him for 2 years, where I gained extensive experience in firearm law. My practice was established in September 2018 in Pretoria. I have a general legal practice, but I specialize in firearm law and criminal litigation and trial advocacy. And I have clients all over the country, and I appear in whatever court my services might be required in. But mostly, obviously, in and around Gauteng, servicing clients' firearms and criminal litigation needs, as well as, like I mentioned, some general practice. And in a nutshell, that's me.
Well, I'm very grateful that you saw your way open to do this series with me. As I said before we started the official video now, there is a lot of misconception out there, even from very often from people who've been firearm owners for a long time. It's like they forget certain things. And sometimes I think emotions also get in the way and make people forget some things. So I'm hoping and trusting that with this series, we'll be able to impart some knowledge and maybe refresh a lot of people as to what goes on and how it works. So I think let's start with, let's start at the very beginning. If somebody decides they want to purchase their first firearm, so we're talking about a complete beginner, whether it's self-defense, whether it's sport, whether it's hunting, the first thing they ask and they need to know is, how do I actually apply for a firearm license? So if you could maybe just walk us through this process in detail, and also, while we're at it, include how the Firearms Control Act shapes not only the application, but the legal responsibilities of firearms ownership afterwards.
Certainly, Riyad. So I think to answer that question, we must start with the fact that firearms possession in South Africa is regulated by statute. The Firearms Control Act 60 of 2000 controls firearm possession and use in South Africa. So anyone who wants to possess a firearm must comply with all the provisions of the Act. In Section 3 of the Act, there is a general prohibition in respect of possession of firearms and ammunition without a license. So essentially what that means is the Act says, and I have it here in front of me, I think it's worth it to actually quote the contents thereof, of Section 3 specifically, and that says the following. Sorry, let me just page to that.
Okay.
General prohibition in respect of firearms and muzzle loading firearms. No person may possess a firearm unless he or she holds for that firearm a license, permit, or authorization issued in terms of this Act. This is now obviously the Firearms Control Act. And it then makes further provision for certain other licenses or authorizations. I note that Section 3 itself does not deal with ammunition, but you will note Section 120 of the Firearms Control Act. That is what we call the offences section. That lists all the numerous offences that one would commit if you were to contravene any provision of the Act. and that includes like I said, any provision of the Act that is contravened could constitute a criminal offence, but it also lists numerous specific criminal offences. So essentially, anybody who wants to possess a firearm must comply with the provisions of this Act. And this Act makes provision for the exact process that needs to be followed. Now, just in broad terms, there are different reasons or motivations for one to possess a firearm. Obviously, a primary consideration in South Africa would be self-defense, but also there are hunters, there are sport shooters, there are certain professional hunters, there are people who conduct security services, etc., etc. So the Act makes provision for quite a variety of that, but for purposes of this discussion, I think let's focus on private ownership for private purposes. The Act prescribes in Section 13 that one can possess certain firearms for self-defense. The category is limited in the sense that you cannot license any firearm. For instance, a self-loading rifle or a self-loading shotgun, otherwise put a semi-automatic rifle or shotgun, or an automatic weapon for that matter, cannot be licensed for self-defense. You would typically therefore license something like a revolver or a pistol under that section. Section 14 does make provision for a restricted firearm for self-defense, where certain firearms that might not qualify under Section 13 could be licensed under Section 14 if you show certain exceptional circumstances why, let's say, a normal defensive firearm wouldn't suffice. Now, that's a whole different Pandora's box as far as what is sufficient. And when it comes also to a Section 13 self-defense firearm, the Act requires that a person must show that they have a need for self-defense and that they cannot satisfy that need by means other than possession of a firearm. So that's also an open question what that means. But typically you have tens of thousands of people in South Africa who have licensed firearms for self-defense, and they would typically set out the general crime situation in the country, their specific exposure to crime. I think in principle, almost any person in South Africa should be able to motivate a firearm license for that purpose. So you quite often see that. Then you have a Section 15 license that applies to occasional hunting or occasional sport shooting. That is for your typical person who might want to, hunt from time to time or do sport shooting from time to time. And in terms of that section, you are also limited as far as the number of firearms that you can license. If I may just perhaps jump back, in terms of Section 13 for self-defense, you can only license one firearm under that section. Yes. Under Section 15, where you license firearms for occasional hunting or occasional sport shooting, you are limited to a total of 4 firearms, provided you don't have a Section 13 firearm. So in broad terms, you are limited to 4 firearm licenses per person, unless you are a dedicated hunter or a dedicated sport shooter. However, in terms of Section 15, you would be able to license 4 firearms or 3 if you already had a Section 13 firearm. That section also allows for the licensing of handguns and non-self-loading rifles. In other words, firearms with a manual action, or shotguns for that matter. So your pump action shotguns, your side-by-side, single shot, over and under shotguns, your typical hunting rifle, and then revolvers or pistols can be licensed in terms of that section. Okay. As far as these 4 firearms for your total of 4 firearms that you can license, you are limited to a total of 2 handguns. So you can essentially have any combination. You could have 4 manual loading rifles, or you could have 2 rifles, 2 shotguns, 3 rifles, 1 handgun, 2 rifles, 2 handguns, whatever it is. But let's call it the average person on the street can license a total of 4 under Section 13 and or Section 15. Section 13 being limited to 1, Section 15 being limited to 4 or 3 if you already have a Section 13. Okay. Then you have what we call a Section 16 license. That is for a dedicated hunter or a dedicated sport shooter. Now, the Act defines a dedicated person as being somebody who belongs to an accredited association. So in the country, we have various accredited hunting and or sport shooting associations. You apply for membership, they make you complete a certain course to obtain your dedicated status, and you must then on an annual basis comply with their code of conduct. You must participate to a certain extent, a certain number of activities per year. You must obviously pay your membership, etc. And if you then do so and you maintain that status, you can then license firearms under Section 16. Under that section, you can license self-loading firearms as well. So self-loading rifles or semi-auto rifles, and the same applies to shotguns. And you are in principle not limited as far as the number of firearms that you can license there, provided you motivate why you require each additional firearm. What I will mention then in general, before anyone can license a firearm for private purposes under any of these sections, in other words, 13, 14, 15, or 16, that person must hold a competency certificate to possess a firearm. Now, that competency certificate is obtained through the police. You must first complete certain prescribed training. In that training, they teach you about some of the contents of the Firearms Control Act, and they also teach you how to handle and use a particular firearm. So there are different categories. There are handgun, shotgun, manually operated rifle, or let's say a bolt action rifle, although you get different mechanisms, and then also a self-loading rifle. And I think I did mention shotgun. So depending on what category you have completed, you then get your, let's call it your proficiency training certificates to prove that you've completed the training. You then apply to the police in the prescribed form for a competency certificate. Once you have a competency certificate to possess, let's say, a handgun and or a shotgun or whatever it is, then you are able to apply for a license for a specific firearm under these sections that I've mentioned. And if I may just point out, this is a common question. You apply for a license for a specific firearm. In other words, on your license will be the serial number and the make of that firearm. Therefore, to be able to apply for a firearm license, you would typically first purchase the firearm, whether it be from a dealer or a private individual who holds a license for it, or whether it's donated to you, you inherit it from an estate. You would have to have the particulars of that particular firearm, and then obviously the particulars of the current owner or the dealer who owns it or whatever it is, and then you will apply for a license for that individual firearm. Once your license is then granted, you are then entitled to take that firearm into your lawful possession. As I mentioned, Section 3 of the Act says that you may not possess a firearm without a license, permit, or authorization. So the Act makes provision that in certain instances, for instance, Section 21 of the Act, you can have a temporary authorization to possess a firearm. The regulations make provision for what is sometimes just informally referred to as a storage permit, but it's actually called a permission to store in terms of the relevant regulation, where you might be able to store a firearm in your safe belonging to another person, but you might not use it. So there are different scenarios, but you may not have any firearm in your possession without some kind of a license, permit, or authorization issued in terms of the Act. Now, all of this is issued by the South African Police Service. How it basically works is you, as the applicant, you go to the closest police station or the police station serving the area where you reside. Let's say you apply for your competency certificate, because that's the first step. You will complete the prescribed forms. There are certain requirements that you need to comply with, certain documents that you need to provide. They then capture it there at the local station. The officer is called the DFO, or Designated Firearms Officer. That person captures your application and fulfills certain other administrative functions. Your application then is forwarded through quite a maze to a provincial head office, then to the Central Firearms Registrar in Pretoria. And there they essentially approve or refuse your competency certificate. There's a criminal record check involved. And also there they approve or deny your license application, which you also apply for at station level and go on from there. If I might just perhaps mention, the Act has a definition of what is a firearm and what is ammunition. That definition is quite broad. So a lot of things that you might think aren't firearms in the typical sense, or something that you might think doesn't qualify as ammunition, like for instance the ammunition that a blank firing a gun might fire. Quite often, if you go and look at the specific definitions, which I won't get into now, you will find that the thing that you have in your possession is either a firearm or it qualifies as ammunition. And at that point, you are in unlawful possession unless you have such a license, permit, or authorization. So in short, the Firearms Control Act deals with all those aspects. It also deals, like I mentioned, with the aspects relating to firearms possessed by dealers, by security companies, by people who use a firearm for whatever business purpose. And the Act also sets out quite extensively all the administrative procedures that are followed in relation to firearms ownership. So there are certain aspects of firearm ownership that do not fall within the Firearms Control Act. For instance, let's say the rules relating to private defense. In other words, when can you use a firearm to defend yourself or someone else? That comes from our common law. That is not contained in the Firearms Control Act. But as far as the paper process is concerned, and as far as the steps and the hoops that you need to jump through to possess or use a firearm, for the most part, all of that is contained in this one single Firearms Control Act.
Okay.
The Act can be found on the internet. There have been a bunch of amendments to it, so one should be careful to accept that whatever you read is an updated version. But in a nutshell, that is the process to be followed if one was to possess a firearm lawfully.
Just on that point for the viewers, because I know we're going to get the question, or we're going to get questions when people watch this video about the Firearms Control Bill 2025 that is under so much discussion right now. And we will do an episode of Legal Talk around that to get Francois' impressions and opinions on that part. So we will get to that. Just keep an eye on the YouTube channel for that, for future episodes. Francois, one last thing. You've covered this process very, very well now. And you mentioned that you have to go to the police, etc., speak to the DFO, all of that. Again, just for the viewers to clarify, there's a practical side to this that you need to do as well. Where do they go to for that? Where does that fit into the process?
All right, so let's try and take it chronologically. You now want to own a firearm. In principle, anybody who is, could walk into a firearm shop and purchase a firearm, but like I said, possessing the firearm is something else. Remember, the Firearms Control Act deals mostly with possession. So we need to distinguish ownership and possession. Ownership means that something belongs to you. Possession means that it is physically under your control. So you would start, you could start by purchasing a firearm first, or you could first, do your proficiency training and your competency certificate. So you would find a accredited training provider. Typically, most firearm dealers or gun shops, you can say, do have either their own in-house training facilities, or they collaborate with someone who can provide the training. So you then basically go for this training where you sit in a class. They teach you some of the contents of the Firearms Control Act. They also take you to the shooting range where you need to handle and shoot with the particular categories of firearms that you intend to obtain a competency certificate for. There's an open book test and a closed book test that you must complete. And if you then pass this process, they issue you certain certificates, let's call it your proficiency training certificates. They get referred to by quite a few different names, but when you then have those certificates, you complete the police prescribed form, which is called application for a competency certificate to possess a firearm. I think the form makes provision for different types of competency certificates, but in our example, it's to possess a firearm. You can also, for instance, get a competency certificate for whatever business purpose it is that you're going to use a firearm. So there are different types of training depending on what you actually want to do with the firearm. Once you have then completed that, like I mentioned, you go to the police, you complete this application form. The Act does list various requirements for a person to apply for and obtain such a competency certificate. One of them is that the applicant must be 21 years or older on the day of applying. There is an exception to that, which I'm not going to get into now, but for the most part, you need to be 21 years or older. You need to be a fit and proper person to possess firearms. You could be disqualified depending on the previous conviction that you have. If you've been convicted of an offense, it's not a blanket disqualification, even though people seem to believe it is. And I've seen numerous occasions where the police refuse licenses or competency certificates on the basis that the applicant has not only a previous conviction, but a pending case. Now, obviously, a pending case is legally not a valid reason, because you have the right to be presumed innocent. But even if you are convicted of an offense, it depends on the exact offense that you have been convicted of, whether or not you still qualify. But let's assume you comply with the requirements for a competency certificate. Then in that instance, you can complete the forms and all the attached documents and submit that to your police station. Section 9 of the Act deals with the numerous requirements, if somebody wanted to have go and have a look. So this is then submitted to your designated firearms officer. They are also supposed to conduct interviews with, typically I think they do it with 2 family members and 1 non-family member. There's a standard form that they typically use, where they ask the people questions like, is this person, sober? Are they someone who is the person someone who you think is competent to possess a firearm? Things like that. The designated firearms officer is actually also supposed to come and do a safe inspection. So the Firearms Control Act says that a firearm must be stored in a prescribed safe. A prescribed safe means as prescribed by the Firearms Control regulations. That is regulations that have been made by the minister in terms of the Firearms Control Act that give further direction and detail to, let's say, the skeleton that is put in place by the Act itself. Now, a prescribed safe means it must comply with certain SABS standards in terms of the design, and then also this safe must be affixed to a fixed structure. So you would affix it to the wall and or the floor of your house. There's also certain requirements how that must be done. But your designated firearms officer is supposed to complete a report on your safe, which forms part of the application process. And they are supposed to come and inspect and see whether the safe is compliant. Quite often they don't do that. These interviews they quite often also don't conduct. They simply might give you the forms to complete or have completed by the people that you use as your, let's call it, your character references. And they might just ask you to provide them with photographs of your installed safe, but some of them don't even do that. It comes down often to a lack of capacity. They don't have vehicles available to go and do the inspections, whatever it is. But that application is then submitted. Once it is approved, like I mentioned, it goes to the Central Firearms Registrar. You then get issued this competency certificate that says you are competent to possess a handgun and or rifle and or shotgun and or self-loading rifle. Once you have that, you can now apply for your firearm license. Now, just a note here, some DFOs do allow people to apply for both simultaneously. In other words, you've purchased the firearm, let's say from a dealer, but it's still in the safe there because you don't have the license to have it in your possession. You've done your competency training, and now you get to or your proficiency training, and now you get to the police station, and they might allow you to apply for your competency certificate and your license at the same time. But as I've mentioned, the competency certificate is a prerequisite for the license. So they must first approve the competency before they approve the license. Now, sometimes, like I said, they allow you to do it this way. Sometimes they don't. The competency certificate application and the license application does not land on the same desk and does not go through the same exact process. And it might then happen that, 2 things running simultaneously, but not at the same speeds and at the same progress, sometimes creates a problem where they might refuse your license because by the time they consider it, you don't yet have your competency certificate in place. So be that as it may, whether you could submit them simultaneously or not, your competency must be approved, and then your license application, which is also a prescribed form, it's called Application for License to Possess a Firearm. SAPS 271 is the official form. You complete that form. With that, you provide your personal document, your personal background, and very importantly, you provide a motivation as to why you want to own this firearm. Now, if I can just quickly deal with the motivation aspect, the prescribed form provides only a few lines where it says motivation for reason for wanting to possess the firearm, or whatever the exact wording is. But typically that is not sufficient. You would typically want to attach either a statement or an affidavit or whatever it is where you say, this is why I want to possess a firearm. Let's say it's for Section 13. You set out your personal circumstances. You set out the crime situation in your area, in the country. You set out, for instance, that you travel on roads often, you travel at night, you are responsible for your wife or child safety, whatever it is, and you provide supporting documents to support whatever statements you've made, and that then forms part of your application. Remember, the Registrar of Firearms, as defined in the Firearms Control Act, that is simply just the Minister of Police, but he has a certain capacity in which he acts as the Registrar of Firearms. And whatever police officer fulfills a function in terms of the Firearms Control Act under the registrar is authorized. There's a provision in the Act that says the registrar may delegate any of his powers to another police officer. Now, you can imagine, obviously, the Commissioner of Police isn't going to be too involved on a day-to-day basis with firearm licensing paperwork. So essentially, that delegation or session, or well, it's a delegation actually, moves all the way down to individual firearm officers at station level, and in particular the designated firearms officer, who then processes all this paperwork. But to get to the point, the registrar has a discretion as to whether or not a license will be issued. The word that is typically used in the Act is the registrar may issue a permit or license or authorization, or may do this or may do that. So you need to convince them. And it's an open question what the actual bar is, because you do have people who simply complete those few lines on the form and say, this is my motivation, and they might attach some supporting documents, and the application might or might not get approved. And you have other people who, without exaggerating, give the police an arch lever file for their license application. Now, there's a lot of debate as far as what is too little and what is too much. I won't get into that now. But suffice to say, you need to have a proper motivation, setting out that you comply with all the requirements of the Act, and that you have a valid basis for wanting your particular license application to be approved. Once that is then approved, you get issued with a license card. It's a plastic card. There's also quite a mess often for them to get that actually printed and returned to you. The police can also print out the document confirming that you have an approved license, and although it was not permitted in the past, these days they do that, and you can then, with that document, take possession of your firearm while you await your license card. Once you have, like I say, an approved license and proof of it, you are allowed to possess your firearm, and you are allowed to carry it on your person or have it in public or whatever it is, subject to a bunch of limitations and rules. And then your license is valid for a certain period. A Section 13 self-defense license lasts for 5 years. Your Section 15 and 16, that is your occasional and dedicated hunting or sport shooting, that is valid for 10 years. And the Act then requires that you must renew that license upon expiry, or actually at least 90 days before that. And then they reconsider your application and decide whether you still comply with all the requirements of the Act. If they are satisfied, they issue a new license for the same time period. And that, in short, is the process that every single firearm license must go through. So for every firearm you want to possess, you will go through a similar process. And you need to obtain a license, as I said, for every specific individual firearm that you own. The competency certificate must also be renewed from time to time. It's a whole conundrum as to how exactly and when exactly, because the Act is quite vague in the section that provides for renewal, and there are different ways to interpret it. But the Act provides that your competency certificate must also be renewed from time to time. You don't have to redo the training. It's almost like a driver's license. You don't have to, go for the test again, but with the driver's license, you do have to test your eyes again. With the firearm, essentially, you just have to lodge the renewal application and satisfy the registrar that you still comply with all the requirements, and you still have a reason for wanting to possess this firearm. And
I think that is a very valuable contribution. I think you've explained the process in quite a bit of detail, and I trust that anybody who watches this video or listens to this on the podcast on Spotify, the podcast is called Quick Shots, will form a very good understanding as to how they need to go about this. If you have any questions at all that are related to legal matters, feel free to ask them in the comments below the video, and we can either include them in the series, or maybe it's something that we've already planned on discussing for somewhere in the rest of the series. But let's hear from you. As for the viewers, you know the drill by now. Please like the video, please subscribe to the channel, and please smash that bell icon so you can get notifications of all our new videos coming out. And keep in mind that this is part 1 of a series, so there will be a bunch of further videos to follow, in which we will be covering a whole host of legal related matters as far as the firearms world is concerned. So it's important, if you want to own a firearm legally and safely in South Africa, that you start by understanding the law. You cannot plead that you didn't know if you want to be a responsible firearms owner. Francois, that is it from me. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing some of your expertise with us. And you and I will have a chat again very soon.
Thank you, Riaan. I look forward to it, and thank you for the opportunity. If I may just mention, obviously, if what we discussed today was very broad, yes, later on in the series, we will get into certain specifics. And I just want to caution everyone that this is obviously an informal discussion. It's not formal legal advice, either from my side or from yours or from the side of Fortis. So please make sure that in your individual situation, whatever it is, make sure that you get individual tailored legal advice and that you act based on that. The Firearms Control Act prescribes very serious penalties, including lengthy jail terms and in some instances minimum prison sentences, minimum period sentences for certain offences. So you might find yourself on the wrong side of the law by simply not having complied with a certain administrative duty that you might have in terms of the Act. As you mentioned, I think at the outset, we do find that many firearm owners who have gone through this competency process and have licensed firearms are completely clueless as far as some of these things are concerned. And please keep in mind that one day when you stand in court, they're not going to have too much sympathy for you. They're going to say to you, you have a competency certificate, you own a firearm, that comes with a certain level of responsibility. I didn't know is not good enough. Your ignorance of the law is not going to be an excuse in the instance of a license holder. So make sure that you follow this series. I think it will be quite valuable, and I look forward to answering your questions. I have no doubt that in the process, I'm also going to learn a few things and hopefully improve my own knowledge as well. So thank you for that, and I look forward to the rest of it.